It started as just another inspiring interview on The Tonight Show, until the woman who made it possible broke down and changed everything. The Tonight Show studio buzzed with energy as Jimmy Fallon prepared for his interview with Dr. Michael Chen, a deaf scientist who had just won a prestigious award for renewable energy research. Standing quietly beside the interview area was Sarah Martinez, a professional ASL interpreter whose steady hands had been translating hope into sign language for over 15 years. At 42, with gentle brown eyes and graying hair in a neat bun, Sarah approached every assignment with quiet dignity and unwavering focus. Jimmy settled into his chair across from Dr. Chen, adjusting his navy suit jacket. The scientist was composed and confident, his eyes bright with intelligence. Sarah's hands moved with practiced grace, translating Jimmy's opening words into flowing ASL movements. Dr. Chen, it's such an honor to have you here tonight, Jimmy began. Your work on solar energy efficiency has been revolutionary. Sarah translated as Dr. Chen signed his passionate response. Thank you, Jimmy. I've always believed that the biggest barriers aren't the ones the world puts in front of us. They're the ones we put in front of ourselves. The interview progressed beautifully. Dr. Chen shared stories of overcoming discouragement from teachers, late nights in labs, and colleagues who learned sign language to collaborate with him. Jimmy created moments of laughter while drawing out the human story behind the scientific achievement. The audience was captivated, many learning about deaf culture for the first time. What advice would you give to young deaf students who want to pursue careers in STEM? Jimmy asked. As Dr. Chen began signing his response, something shifted in Sarah's expression. Her hands continued translating, but there was a tremor in her voice. I would tell them, Sarah voiced for Dr. Chen, that they should never let anyone convince them they can't achieve their dreams. The world needs their unique perspective, their determination, Sarah's voice cracked. Her hands stopped mid-sentence as tears began streaming down her face. Dr. Chen noticed immediately, concern filling his expression. Jimmy's smile faded. Sarah, are you okay? Sarah tried to regain composure. I'm sorry, Dr. Chen. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I shouldn't have. Hey, Jimmy interrupted softly, walking closer. Whatever's happening, it's okay. Take your time. The studio fell completely silent as Sarah looked at both men, then spoke the words that would change everything. Jimmy, this is my last interpretation. The words hung in the air like a confession. Jimmy's eyebrows rose in surprise and concern. Your last interpretation? What do you mean? Sarah's composure crumbled. I've been a sign language interpreter for 16 years because my daughter Emma was born deaf. I wanted to make sure I could communicate with her, be the bridge she needed to connect with the hearing world. Jimmy stepped closer, his attention focused completely on Sarah. Emma is 17 now, she continued. She's brilliant, independent, heading to Gallaudet University to study engineering, and she doesn't need me to translate for her anymore. Why would this be your last interpretation? Jimmy asked gently. Doesn't Emma's independence mean you've succeeded? Sarah laughed through her tears, but it was painful. Being Emma's interpreter wasn't just my job. It was my identity. For 17 years, I was her voice, the bridge between her world and mine. Last month, she told me she didn't want me to interpret for her anymore. She said she needed to stand on her own. And now you feel like you've lost your purpose. Jimmy understood. I feel like I've lost my daughter, Sarah whispered. Not because she's gone, but because the way I connected with her, protected her, made sure she was heard. None of that matters anymore. Dr. Chen signed urgently. Sarah translated through fresh tears. He says I'm wrong. He says I didn't just give Emma a voice. I gave her the confidence to use it. Jimmy perched on the edge of his desk. Sarah, When you translate for people like Dr. Chen, what are you really doing? I'm making communication possible. I'm helping people understand each other. And when you were translating for Emma all those years? Sarah paused, understanding beginning to dawn. I was teaching her that her thoughts mattered, that her voice deserved to be heard. Exactly, Jimmy said. And now, every time Emma speaks for herself, advocates for what she needs, that's you. That's the gift you gave her. Dr. Chen nodded emphatically, signing again. Sarah translated. He says the best teachers make themselves unnecessary. Emma learned to be her own interpreter because I taught her she deserved to be heard. Jimmy stood up and addressed the studio audience. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing right now is something beautiful and heartbreaking and perfect all at once. This is what love looks like when it succeeds, when a mother loves a child so completely that she teaches that child to fly, even though it means watching her soar away. The audience began to applaud, but Jimmy held up his hand. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. Emma might not need you to interpret her words anymore, but the world still needs you. Dr. Chen still needs you. All the people whose voices you've helped carry over the years, they still need you. Sarah looked confused. But Emma said she needed to learn to stand on her own, Jimmy interrupted gently. She didn't say, you should stop helping other people stand on their own too. Dr. Chen began signing again, this time with an intensity that caught everyone's attention. Sarah translated, her voice growing stronger. He says that when he was 17, he had an interpreter who taught him that his thoughts were valuable enough to translate. He says that interpreter saved his life because she showed him that the world wanted to hear what he had to say. And now, Jimmy said, connecting the dots, you've raised a daughter who believes the same thing about herself. You've created another Dr. Chen, another person who will change the world because she knows her voice matters. Sarah was crying again, but these tears were different. They weren't tears of loss anymore. They were tears of recognition, of understanding, of a mother beginning to see her child's independence, not as rejection, but as the greatest success of her life. Jimmy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Sarah, I want to do something, and I need you to trust me, okay? Sarah nodded, unsure what Jimmy had in mind. I want to call Emma, right now. I want her to see you on this stage doing what you do best, and I want her to tell you herself what she thinks about her mom. Sarah's eyes went wide. Jimmy, no, she's probably studying. She doesn't need to be bothered with. She doesn't need to be bothered with seeing her mother be honored for the incredible work she does? She doesn't need to see her mom being celebrated for raising an independent, confident, brilliant daughter? Jimmy smiled that warm smile that had made him America's favorite late-night host. Trust me, Sarah. She needs to see this. Jimmy dialed the number Sarah gave him, and within moments, Emma's face appeared on the studio's large screen via video call. She was indeed studying, sitting at a desk in her bedroom with textbooks spread around her. When she saw the Tonight Show set and her mother on stage, her expression changed to one of complete surprise. Emma began signing rapidly, her hands moving with the same grace and precision that her mother had displayed all evening. Sarah translated, her voice full of wonder. She says, Mom, what are you doing on TV? Are you okay? Why are you crying? Jimmy stepped into view of the camera. Hi, Emma. I'm Jimmy Fallon. Your mom has been interpreting for Dr. Chen tonight, and she just told us something that I think you need to hear. Emma signed something back, looking concerned. Sarah translated, she wants to know what I told you. I told them, Sarah said, signing as she spoke so Emma could understand directly, that I feel lost because you don't need me to interpret for you anymore. I told them I feel like I'm not your mother the same way I used to be. Emma's expression changed completely. She set down her pen and began signing with an emotional intensity that filled the screen. Her face was animated, passionate, urgent. Sarah's voice broke as she translated. She says, "Mom, do you have any idea how many times I watch you work and feel proud to be your daughter? Do you know that when I see you on stage helping people communicate, I think about how you taught me that my thoughts were worth translating?" The studio audience was crying openly now. Even Dr. Chen had tears in his eyes as he watched this conversation unfold. Emma continued signing, and Sarah continued translating, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You didn't just teach me sign language, Mom. You taught me that I deserved to be heard. You taught me that my ideas mattered. You taught me that being deaf wasn't something that made me less than anyone else. It was something that made me unique and valuable and important." Jimmy walked closer to the screen, addressing Emma directly. "Emma, your mom thinks that because you don't need her to interpret for you anymore, she somehow failed as your mother." Emma shook her head vigorously and began signing again, her movements sharp and definitive. Sarah translated, "Mom, you didn't fail. You succeeded so completely that you made yourself proud to be unnecessary. But you're not unnecessary to me. You're not unnecessary to the world. You're my hero, and you're a hero to every person whose voice you've helped carry." Sarah was sobbing now, but they were tears of joy, of relief, of a mother finally understanding that her child's independence wasn't a rejection. It was a graduation. Emma signed something else, and this time she spoke aloud as well, her voice clear and strong despite the slight accent that sometimes accompanies those who learn to speak after learning to sign. "Mom, don't you dare stop interpreting. The world needs more people like you. People who understand that communication isn't just about words. It's about making sure everyone feels heard and valued and important." Jimmy turned to address the studio audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we just witnessed is the most beautiful example of successful parenting I've ever seen. Sarah didn't just raise a daughter. She raised a young woman who understands her own worth because her mother spent 17 years showing her that her voice mattered." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Jimmy wasn't finished. He turned back to Sarah, who was wiping away tears and trying to regain her composure. "Sarah, I have a proposition for you. The Tonight Show has viewers who are deaf, and we've never had a regular ASL interpreter. Would you consider being our official interpreter? Not just for occasional guests, but as a permanent member of our team?" Sarah's mouth fell open in shock. Dr. Chen began applauding enthusiastically, and Emma's face on the screen lit up with pride and excitement. "But more than that," Jimmy continued, "I want to create a scholarship program for deaf students pursuing careers in STEM, in Emma's honor and in honor of all the young people whose voices you've helped carry over the years." Emma was signing frantically on the screen, and Sarah translated through her tears. She says, "Mom, say yes. Say yes to all of it. This is what you were meant to do." Sarah looked around the studio, at Dr. Chen, who was nodding encouragingly, at the audience, who were on their feet applauding, at Emma's face on the screen, glowing with pride, at Jimmy, whose expression showed nothing but genuine admiration and respect. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes. Yes to all of it." The celebration that followed felt less like a television show and more like a family reunion. Dr. Chen stood up to hug Sarah. Jimmy joined them, and even the audience seemed to surge forward with love and support. Emma, still on the video call, was signing "I love you, Mom" over and over again. But the moment that would be remembered forever came when Jimmy turned to the camera for his closing remarks. Instead of his usual comedic sign-off, he spoke directly to the families watching at home. "Tonight, we learned something beautiful about love and letting go and holding on all at the same time. We learned that the greatest gift we can give the people we love is the confidence to use their own voice. And we learned that sometimes the most important thing we can do is help others find the strength to soar, even when it means watching them fly away from us. He gestured to Sarah, who was still emotional but radiant with joy and purpose. Sarah Martinez has spent 17 years teaching her daughter that her voice matters. And now she's going to spend the rest of her career teaching the world that everyone's voice matters. The show ended with Sarah interpreting Jimmy's final words, her hands moving with the grace and precision that had made communication possible for thousands of people over the years. But now, for the first time in months, she wasn't translating out of obligation or duty. She was translating out of joy, out of purpose, out of the knowledge that her work mattered not because her daughter needed her, but because the world needed her. After the camera stopped rolling, Emma stayed on the video call to watch her mother receive congratulations from the crew and guests. Dr. Chen spent 20 minutes talking with Sarah about the importance of representation and the power of seeing people like themselves in positions of respect and authority. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Jimmy pulled Sarah aside and said quietly, "You know, I've been doing this job for years, and I've learned that the most important conversations we have aren't the ones that get the biggest laughs. They're the ones that remind us what it means to be human." Sarah signed her response before speaking it aloud. "Thank you for giving me the space to remember who I am." In the months that followed, Sarah became a beloved fixture on The Tonight Show, not just interpreting for deaf guests, but helping to make the show more accessible to all viewers. The scholarship program she and Jimmy created funded dozens of deaf students pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Emma went on to Gallaudet University as planned, where she studied engineering and started a program to mentor other deaf students. She never missed an episode of The Tonight Show when her mother was interpreting, and she often sent photos to her friends, pointing proudly at the screen and saying, "That's my mom," making sure everyone's voice is heard. And Sarah? She learned that being a mother wasn't about being needed in the same way forever. It was about loving someone so completely that you could celebrate their independence, even when it meant redefining your entire sense of purpose. She learned that the greatest success wasn't raising a child who needed you, but raising a child who knew they deserved to be heard, whether you were there to interpret or not. Every night, as Sarah translated Jimmy's closing remarks, she remembered Emma's words. "You didn't just teach me that my voice mattered, Mom. You taught me that everyone's voice matters." And in that reminder, she found not just her purpose, but her peace.